Back again. Okay. This shows an ominous looking picture. Anyhow, looks like hell to me. It's what is the prophecy? I think this is part 6. Apocalypse, Greek for revelation, meaning to uncover, reveal. There is no argument among the hundreds of various religions, from mainstream Judaism, Christianity, and Islam to all the many sect groups within each, that the common understanding of the apocalypse is that it shall manifest in a battle of unprecedented proportions and conclude in the final destruction of evil. The sons of light shall vanquish the sons of darkness. Satan himself shall be vanquished forevermore. This battle will be led by priests who are directed by God. I don't know where they get that. Priests who are directed by God. And this battle will be led by priests who are directed by God. I have no clue where that comes from. Not for the independence of any one nation, but to bring eternal redemption and victory for the righteous. I'll agree with that part. Comparing prophecies from the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Dead Sea Scrolls illuminates just how similar these predictions are and reflects the universal belief that just when things are crushingly awful, help will arrive. But for who? From the Old Testament book of Isaiah, one of the most popular biblical books among Second Temple Jews. Let me see. Yeah, one of the most popular biblical books among Second Temple Jews. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. Then shall the lame man leap as an hart. Preach good tidings unto the meek, bind up the brokenhearted, liberty to the captives. That's not the complete scripture. That's just pieces of it. That's what's hard to read. From the New Testament, Gospel of Luke, unto many that were blind he gave sight. Tell John the blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, to the poor the gospel is preached. That was going on during while he was alive. From the Dead Sea Scrolls, he will honor the pious upon the throne of his eternal kingdom, setting prisoners free, opening the eyes of the blind, raising up those who are bowed down. For he shall heal the critically wounded, he shall revive the dead. He shall send good news to the afflicted. That's confusing. Anyhow. Let's move on. Is our number up? Let's see what this says here. I think I know where this is going. I think it shows pictures of the 4 horsemen. Yeah, like Chinese. In years of poring over the Bible, the prophecies of Nostradamus, and the newer revelations of the Dead Sea Scrolls, aficionados of the apocalypse have paid particular attention to the obscure significance of numbers. Gematria is a form of Talmudic scholarship in which the letters of the alphabet have numerical values. This is numerology, which are added up and analyzed to reveal hidden meanings in the Torah. This is an exhaustive and arcane field of study, but even casual readers of both the Book of Revelation and the War Scroll may be enlightened by the significance of certain numbers. God counsels his people abundantly the real hidden meanings. You get it from above. That's what revelation is. We don't have to depend on trying to decipher, the thing behind the thing and all that. I'll go back to John 14 again. Let's see here. They show what these numbers mean. They're giving you the numbers here, what they mean. I'll give you an example. Number 4 equals creation. 6, short of perfection. 666, sin times 3, complete depravity. 8, new beginnings. 9, judgment. 12, completion, God's design. Then it goes into this here. Consider the implication of these numbers of the War Scrolls description of the final battle. Now, this is the War Scroll, so I shouldn't be judging this. I've never read it. But I know people that use numerology when they deal with the Old Testament. That's a waste of time. Okay, so the War Scrolls description of the final battle. The war lasts 40 years. Well, it says earlier on here that 40 equals or means ultimate completion, the time needed for God to create his purpose for humanity. In the last battle, there are 6 skirmishes. The sides are in a 3-3 tie. That's going to mean something. The 7th battle is the final confrontation fought on the 7th day, in which 7 savage fights occur before the final victory, when the great hand of God shall overcome Belial and all the angels of his dominion, and all the men of his forces shall be destroyed forever. In Revelation, numbers also carry weight. The scroll has 7 seals. The Lamb who takes the scroll has 7 horns and 7 eyes. There are 24 thrones in which are seated 24 elders. The 7th seal mentions 7 trumpets, 7 angels, and 7 bowls. And you can spend 7 lives trying to figure that out. All the while, if you're not hearing from Jesus, if you're not praying, if you're not walking correctly, not hearing from Jesus, it'll be of no value. Okay. We've got time. Okay. Custodians of the Scrolls. Theories about an Essene community, the Essene, and its connection to the Dead Sea Scrolls have always been an important topic among scholars and religious historians. Excuse me. As early as the 19th and early 20th centuries, the city known as Khirbet, Qumran had drawn the attention of explorers and archaeologists. Situated on the northwestern shore of the Dead Sea, the location had a fortress-like quality similar to other known sites in the region, possibly as a defense of Jerusalem against attacks from the hostiles in Samaria to the north and Perea to the east. Excuse me. Who were the inhabitants of Khirbet Qumran, and what, if any, connection did they have to the Dead Sea Scrolls? One of the first manuscripts discovered, later named the Manual of Discipline, and in more recent years called the Community Rule or Community Rule Book, provided the first clue. The text described a group whose customs and ideology mirrored an ancient Middle Eastern Jewish sect known as the Essenes. Scrolls discovered less than 2 years later provided further Essene-like compositions. It didn't take long for scholars to make a connection between the writings contained in the Manual of Discipline and those of the 1st century CE historian Pliny the Elder. In his final work, Natural History, written in blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's what he named his final work. In his final work, Natural History, Pliny described a group of Essenes living on the western shore of the Dead Sea, the immediate vicinity of the scroll's discovery. Pliny wrote that this sect lived in isolation with only the palm trees for company. Was Khirbet Qumran so close to the scroll's final hiding place, the home of the Essenes? And what of the Essenes themselves? Who were these long-lost people? Were they the people of the scrolls, the custodians, and possibly the creators of those ancient texts. The Essenes call themselves the sons of Zadok, after the high priest from the time of King Solomon, more than 1,000 years earlier. The members of the sect, numbering roughly 4,000 according to the first century CE Jewish writers and historians Josephus and Philo, lived communally, either in isolated settlements or in small, closed communities in larger towns. They were strident believers in Mosaic law, and unlike the other two major Jewish groups of the time, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, Essenes believed that God controlled all earthly affairs. The human soul was immortal and would be rewarded in heaven or punished in the fires of hell for deeds done on earth. Membership in the group called for a trial period of several years. Initiates were made to take vows of religious devotion and secrecy. Once accepted, members gave up their possessions, pooling these resources into a community fund from which a small allowance was provided. Observance of the Sabbath and ritual purity and cleanliness were paramount to the membership. Essenes practiced self-discipline, humility, charity, and brotherly love for each other. They kept no slaves, believing such a practice was cruel and unjust. Good for them. The link between the Essene Brotherhood, Khirbet Qumran, and the Dead Sea Scrolls became manifest in 1951 when an excavation at Khirbet Qumran turned up cable boxes. No, I'm just kidding. I thought that. See if you're awake. Turned up a jar, cooking pots, and lamps that were nearly identical to similar objects found in the cave containing the first manuscript. The archaeologists conducting the dig concluded that the inhabitants of Khirbet Qumran deposited the scrolls in the cave. Within months, newly discovered caves yielded scores of intact scrolls and thousands of scroll fragments, further fueling interest in the manuscript's mysterious history. In time, it became widely accepted among scholars and the general public that the Essenes had a sizable library at Khirbet Qumran, which included old and well-used manuscripts brought to Qumran from elsewhere, as well as works newly written and copied at the site itself. The Essenes had hidden the scrolls in the caves under duress, probably during Roman military assaults on the city around 70 CE, at which time Khirbet Qumran was overrun and vanquished. Their isolated sanctuary monastery sacked by Roman legionaries, the people of the scrolls vanished into the, I've never seen that word before, oubliettes of history. What I'm going to do, we'll keep going. It says here, the teacher of righteousness versus the sons of darkness. The Dead Sea Scrolls reveal to modern readers numerous groups and individuals, either leaders or foes of the Essenes. Among the Brotherhood's foremost leaders was the individual called the Teacher of Righteousness, or the Righteous Teacher. Details of his activities figure most prominently in the manuscript known as the Damascus Document. An unnamed priest from Jerusalem, the teacher was the organizer and first leader of the Essene community at Qumran. So he, has God in parentheses, raised up for them a teacher of righteousness to guide them in the way of his heart. Reads the Damascus Document. In about 100 BCE, the teacher and his adherents left the holy city, angry and disenchanted that a corrupt priesthood had introduced pagan customs into the Jewish community. Boy, is that not the history of faith. The mixing and matching of this thing and that thing, ideologies, and, Okay. The group headed into the Judean desert wilderness, where the teacher taught his followers an understanding of the Torah, the Jewish holy book, and revealed to them the hidden things in which Israel had gone astray. But there were those who thought the teacher was misguided. One scroll describes opposition by the traitors with the man of the lie, because they have not obeyed the words of the teacher of righteousness from the mouth of God. End of quote. The teacher also suffered fierce hostility from someone called the wicked priest, who at one time intended to kill the teacher. One scroll reveals the wicked priest pursued the teacher of righteousness to destroy him in the heat of his anger at his place of exile. The precise outcome of the wicked priest's evil intentions is not clear, but he did in some way harm the teacher and his followers. For this crime, it quotes, God handed him, the wicked priest, over to his enemies, humiliating him with a consuming affliction with despair, because he had done wrong to his chosen. End of quote. To date, no one has succeeded in identifying the teacher or the wicked priest. The scrolls tell us that the Essenes had divided humanity into two separate camps: the sons of light, followers of the teacher's message, and the sons of darkness, the enemies of the Essenes. Perhaps temple priests in Jerusalem, Romans, or anyone who failed to live strictly by Mosaic law. The fate of the two rival factions is revealed in the War Scroll. The scroll describes a war fought in 7 stages over 49 years, providing detailed descriptions of weaponry, battle tactics, and the ages of the combatants. After numerous setbacks, the Sons of Light, led by Michael, the archangel, emerge victorious, a victory for God in which the Sons of Righteousness shall shine to all ends of the world, continuing to shine forth until the end of the appointed seasons of darkness. One last thing here. Jesus the Essene, in question mark. Jesus of Nazareth lived several decades before the collapse of the Essene community at Qumran in about 70 CE. As a Jew, Jesus shared a common religious tradition with the Essenes. He certainly lived in the vicinity, preaching in the surrounding desert near the Jordan River 3 miles away. Jesus may have visited Qumran, but there is no record he had any contact with its inhabitants. Long before the discovery of the scrolls, writers attempted to link Jesus to the Essene movement. In 1790, German theologian Karl Barth said Jesus was a secret agent of the Essenes. In 1863, French historian Joseph Ernest Renan, writing in Life of Jesus, suggested Jesus had been mentored by the Essenes. After the scrolls were discovered, conjecture regarding Jesus' connection to the Essenes began anew. Journalist Edmund Wilson claimed Jesus had lived with the Essenes during his childhood. Charles Francis Porter maintained Jesus' messianic teachings were fashioned on Essene ideologies. Neither assertion has been proven. They remain pure speculation. Or maybe he was speaking the words of God, as he states. Indeed, some writers argue quite the opposite. Dead Sea Scrolls authority Herschel Shanks, author of Understanding the Dead Sea Scrolls, says Jesus was quite anti-Essene, citing Jesus' objection to the strict insistence on ritual purity practiced by the Essenes. Austrian scholar Kurt Schubert maintains that Jesus' exhortation, "You have heard it said, hate thine enemy, but I say to you, love your enemies," spoken in the Sermon on the Mount, may be a reference to the Essenes' oath to hate the sons of darkness, the enemies of Israel. If Schubert's hypothesis is correct, it would thus reflect Jesus' own anti-Essene stance, according to Shanks. Gosh, it almost sounds like a politician. Okay. We'll leave that there long enough. We'll see you for part 7 next, or whatever it is. Love you, God bless.